Prishindetia, and welcome to Tirana, Albania. This is a place that many people have never heard of. Many people have no context for Albania. They don't know where it is, but this country here in the Balkans, just north of Greece, just south of Montenegro, is an amazing place with an amazing history that spans thousands of years. During this series, in which I'll cover many different places in Albania, we'll discuss the history, the politics, and of course the food of this beautiful Balkan nation. Today we're starting you off with a treat. Albania is one of the weirdest countries when it comes to communism. They had one of the most oppressive regimes, phone tapping, following people, arresting people, and one of the most insane dictators of all time. Today we're going to talk about Albania in the context of that communist past. We're going to learn a little bit about Tirana as we go through today, and maybe you'll learn something new about a country you probably didn't know much about. Come along. Our Albanian communist story starts on this very unassuming corner of a pretty regular street in central Tirana. Behind me here is the house of Enver Hoxha, the absolutely insane dictator who ruled Albania for nearly 40 years following World War II up until the fall of the Iron Curtain in the early 1990s. You can see the house here. It's not extremely extravagant, which I would say is a good thing, considering he was a communist, and I kind of think it's admirable that he actually lived in the city where many other communist dictators lived outside the city. It may be the only admirable thing that he did his entire 40 years, but nonetheless, that is the house of the man. So the story goes that in 1941, the Communist Party of Albania was formed. It was kind of a subversive group that was dealing with all of the problems that were happening during World War II. As the Axis powers fell at the end of World War II in 1945, the Communist Party seized power. It was their time to rule over Albania, and it was their time to make Albania the communist dream that so many people wanted at that time. This was all led by Enver Hoxha. With help from the Soviets and the other Eastern Bloc countries, Albania entered this huge communist sphere that went all the way from Albania in the south up through Central and Eastern Europe and all the way into the Soviet republics and the Soviet Union itself. The first 5 years under Albanian communist rule were what is known as the Purge. The communist government took anybody who could be seen as a dissident, anybody who disagreed with communist policies, and put them to trial and killed them or locked them up. Torture, extortion, bribery were all used during this time to ensure that the communists had a stranglehold over the country, which they maintained for the next 45 years. The Albanians made sure to broker a deal with the Soviets because the larger neighbor to the north, Yugoslavia, was imposing and had already taken over Kosovar, Albania, as part of the Serbian territory. The Albanians were very worried that while they wanted to consolidate power at home, they also wanted to ensure their stability for the longevity of the communist kind of fervor that was happening in the area. As the Soviets quickly realized that Albania was kind of a crazy state led by people that were not necessarily in the best intentions and were more worried about power and control than communist insights, the Soviets abandoned them, only to be filled by the Chinese presence of the Maoists in the 1960s. This led to a very similar cultural revolution here in Albania to the one that happened in China. This cultural revolution sent families from the city, the intelligentsia, doctors, lawyers, and more into the countryside to work the fields, as villagers from around Albania were shifted back into cities to work in factories. This sent Albanian society into chaos where people didn't know their neighbors, people didn't know what was happening, and the infrastructure was built incredibly quickly with these increasingly growing cities and these decreasingly populated fields and small villages and towns. As far as the future of Albania is concerned, this is kind of where the train came off the rails. Enver Hoxha consolidated even more power and spiraled Albania into an isolationist state that even China kind of abandoned at some point. Hoxha became the paranoid leader, a leader unlike any in the region besides maybe Ceausescu in Romania, and was known for stockpiling weapons to ensure that Albania would not be attacked during this Cold War period that plagued the Soviet Union and the United States. He stockpiled so many weapons that after the fall of Albania, you can see this in the movie, I think it's called War Dogs, that they had millions and millions and millions of rounds of ammunition, of artillery, of tanks. I mean, the amount of stuff that they stockpiled during this this time period was unbelievable, buying arms from all around the world, China, Ukraine, Soviet Union, the United States, and more. This paranoia that Enver Hoxha had, that Albania would be attacked and destroyed by foreign powers, led to probably what Albania is known for the most. And if you guys watch Bald and Bankrupt, something that he covered quite extensively, and these are the bunkers of Albania. Ooh. Quite small. Here we are in the bunker. So here you can see where they had a machine gun shell. This is a turret essentially, and they would, you know, shoot out of here. You got two sides, and these bunkers are incredible because there are apparently 15 bunkers per square kilometer of Albania. Albania is not a big country, not even close to being a big country. So that means that in Albania, they wager there are something up to 175,000 bunkers. If you don't call that paranoid, I don't know what paranoid would be. You can find these bunkers in countrysides. You can find them in people's backyards. You can find them in parks like we're in now, in children's play places. You can find people residing in them today. You can find them being used as toilets. You can find them being used to house goats in the countryside. These things are incredible. And the amount of manpower that they used to build these was absolutely absurd. The tax money that was used during the communist times in Albania went almost specifically towards industrial housing for the people and to military expenditures to make sure that they had enough ammunition, enough defenses to basically rebut any sort of impeding force coming from the coastline of the Adriatic, from the north, from Yugoslavia, and from the south, from Greece. Albania during this time was considered as almost a rogue state, a state that traded with almost no countries in the region or in the world in general. Obviously the Albanians knew this, and even if you were a Communist Party supporter, things were really, really rough here in Albania. People were disappearing, people were spied on. It was a really bad time to live in Albania. So Albania is known for having one of the largest diaspora of people, both because of communism and both historically through different precedents. But you can find millions of Albanians in Turkey. You can find them all around the Balkans. You can even find a big Albanian group who escaped during communist times and moved to the northeastern part of the United States. This is where I'll shout out Action Bronson. I'm sure his family probably came over at that time as well. While Enver Hoxha's reign of terror affected Albania basically for 40 years, he died in 1985. And before that, the Communist Party of Albania was losing their grasp on the country. They didn't shake off their communist leadership until 1992. Here you can see they have a piece of the Berlin Wall here to kind of symbolize this connection with its communist past. But the good news is that since then, the Albanians have re-entered modern European society. They want to be a part of the European Union, and that they are more open and forward-focusing than they were in the past. Now, that doesn't mean Albania isn't a land of rampant corruption today, a land that is hyper-nationalist. Maybe, you know, hard to say if they're hyper-nationalist or not, but or a country with a lot of problems. That is very true, and I will discuss that in my next video. But you cannot talk about Albania without discussing this communist past because of the pure insanity of all of it. And I'm going to take you someplace that kind of shows you the true insanity that was Enver Hoxha. So here in front of me, which you can see, is this epic communist pyramid situation. I'm really disappointed that they're actually rebuilding it now, and I'm glad I captured it before they basically kind of tear it down and restart it. But it was basically started in the early 80s and was supposed to be a museum that was kind of glorifying and monumentalizing the reign of Enver Hoxha. It never got finished. It never was turned fully into a museum, and it's actually laid in ruin basically up until now that they're fixing it. It's an interesting story that you could actually go to the top of it, and you could kind of like get a really good view of the city. But now, you know, instead of having it be a dead space to a guy that was really bad for the country, they seem to be repairing it, doing nice things to it, which is kind of, this is a nice like fairy tale end to the communist era. A lot of these places in Eastern Europe that had a lot of communist dictatorship throughout the years, a lot of them are getting rid of it and trying to repair what was built and trying to move on past it. So this is the Pyramid of Tirana, a beautiful example of how crazy one man can be, that he wanted to immortalize himself in this concrete pyramid. What a guy. They're going for a modern workspace kind of style. You know, you can sit on the stairs here, feel pretty cool, stand at the top, and this is kind of what they're going for. Do you like it? Comment below. If you go just to the north of Tirana, you can go to a museum called Bunkart, which is basically this museum that was built in this massive, like unbelievably massive complex that Hoxha built underground. This has 150 different rooms. It has a amphitheater, it has rooms for living, it has like stockpiles of food. Like, they were really believing that the world was going to end and that it was his job to keep, I would say, the higher level Albanians safe. So just the scale of what was built is so shocking, and you guys can see in the pictures that are going across the screen right now. And I went 4 years ago, and it was just unbelievable, the scale of the fear that was put into the Albanian people and into the regime itself by their extremely paranoid leader. So if you want to come to a country where you can really see the remnants of what communism did to a country, whether it's the epic scale block housing, whether it's the Enver Hoxha bunkers, whether it's the underground labyrinth that only a crazy communist man can create, I think Albania is the place for you, and I recommend it. This is not the best light for Albania. It's a beautiful country. I have so much to show you, so much amazing and beautiful history from this delightfully placed little country in the Balkans. So thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to, of course, like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. It really helps me out. We have lots more content coming from Albania, so stay tuned. We'll be talking history, food, politics, and more. Faleminderit, that's thank you in Albanian, and that's the only other word I know besides hello. See you in the next video.